What's going on, guys? Welcome back to part 2 of this 4-part series where I talk about my soccer journey over in Europe. And if you haven't already, I would recommend you watching the first part where I talk about what happened in England, and feel free to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out tremendously. Today I'll discuss my time in Croatia and how from that trip I went back to England, packed my bags, and moved out to Ireland. Just to give you guys a quick backstory to this Croatia trip, back in December of 2017, about 3 weeks after I graduated from college, I went out to Chicago to a 3-day combine camp, did well, and was put in touch with a scout and an agent that were business partners. They're the ones that helped me with my month-and-a-half long trial in January and February of 2018 with Waterford FC in the Irish Premier Division. Unfortunately, things didn't work out with that trial, and then they told me to come back out and go to this Croatia trip, and that's where we're going to pick up the story. So on July 25th, the day after I played my last game in England, I went to Manchester Airport, flew to Dubrovnik, Croatia, had a 12-hour layover, and then boarded this plane. I just want to include it because it felt like something out of a war movie when I was looking out my window. Nonetheless, I flew into Zagreb a day early before all the other players flew in, and the agent put me up in a super nice Airbnb. The next day rolled around, I met up with all the players, and we headed to Prelog, which is the northernmost city in Croatia. There we set up our base camp for the remaining 9 days, and on July 27th, the trip officially started. We were put up in a sports-specific facility that accommodates teams that are conducting their preseason. We played on a fantastic field. We had a 3-course breakfast, lunch, and dinner served to us every single day. And we also had a physio that was there to accommodate our every need, whether it would be to get taped prior to training or a game, all the way down to getting massaged afterwards. That being said, our schedule looked something like this. We would wake up every single day and go on a 20-minute walk or jog just to loosen up those muscles, followed by a 10-minute stretch before we had breakfast. And after that, the schedule varied depending if we had a game or not. We pretty much stuck to the schedule except for August 3rd. That day we had a game scheduled, but the coaching staff decided that it would be best for the players to have a day off since we played in 3 games up to that point. And also a lot of players were picking up little knocks and bruises on the side, which unfortunately happened to myself. I picked up an injury the very first game we played against NK Sasveta. You know, going through the month-long preseason in England and playing in 5 games up to that point in a matter of 2.5 weeks, my body was starting to catch up to itself. About 20 minutes in, I went into the tackle and my right ankle just gave. I ended up playing about 70 minutes but was subbed off because I couldn't handle the pain. Now, looking at the calendar for those morning runs, I would just go for a walk. For the training sessions, the coaching staff decided that it would be best for me just to be off to the side doing core and upper body work. They didn't want me to suffer a non-game related injury and cause some more damage to that right ankle. And then all the spare time that we had, I would just do vigorous recovery sessions. And since it was the ankle, there's nothing much you can do. You can just ice it and rest it. So it was kind of tough. I really wanted to be involved, but I really had to know my limits and save my energy for the games, which I ended up playing and starting in the remainder of the games. And to get ready for those games, I would just take a questionable amount of pain meds. What athlete doesn't? And I would also have my ankle taped by the physio. Thankfully, I didn't roll my ankle again. I just suffered through a lot of pain, but still performed great. Now, another reason why we took the 3rd off, because the last game on the 4th, we were playing against GNK Dinamo, otherwise known as Dinamo Zagreb. That was the biggest game we had scheduled in Croatia. Even though it wasn't their first team, their second team was still valued at around $3 million. And I did my research after the game, and the guy I was defending was worth around $350,000, and I put in a few good tackles on him, so that was fun. Now, the whole point of this trip was for each player to get game footage that was sent out to teams around Europe. Also, a lot of scouts were invited to these games that evaluated the players and could have potentially brought a player on trial with another team. That being said, the trip concluded. I went back home to England and just awaited for a response. In the last video, I talked about what happened during that week and how on Thursday, AFC Mansfield offered me a contract, but I couldn't accept it due to FA regulations. thankfully, on Friday, the following day, I received a phone call from my agent notifying me that a team in Ireland wants me to come out and potentially sign with them. Hearing that news, I packed my bag, said goodbye to all my friends, and made my way towards Ireland. Another sunny day here in Sheffield with the lads, just chilling. Last day, kind of sad, but life's life. Upon my arrival on August 13th, I was only allowed to stay there for a month, and the reason why I mention this is because it comes and haunts me later on in the story. But to give you some context to why it was only limited to 1 month is due to a couple of factors. One of them being is that most European countries follow the Schengen area visa regulations. That means that as an American with a US passport, I'm only able to travel for a combined of 90 days out of a total of 180. Once my 90 days are reached, I have to leave the Schengen area for another 90 days before my visa resets. As you can see, however, by the map, England, Croatia, and Ireland don't follow these rules. In England, you're allowed to stay for a total of 6 months out of a year, and in Croatia and Ireland, even though they're not part of the Schengen area, they do follow very similar regulations where you're only allowed to stay for 90 days out of a 180-day period. With that part explained, the reason I was only able to stay there for a month instead of 3 is because my immigration officer took into account when I was back in Ireland in January and February. And according to Irish law, the immigration officer at the port of entry will decide your length of stay by stamping your passport. So my immigration officer probably didn't have breakfast, was in a bad mood, and just stamped my passport for 1 month. Now with that part out the way, let's get into what happened in Ireland. So the team that myself and 4 other players went to was Limerick FC, which is located in the 3rd biggest city and at the time was battling relegation. They were second to last in the table in the League of Ireland. Going there, my agent told me that the team was in desperate need of a defender since they had the 2nd most goals conceded that season. So I go in there with high hopes and ready to turn things around. The first 2 training sessions go by. I'm buzzing, feeling good about the way I've been playing. My ankle's not hurting that much. However, all of that changed on the 3rd day. After the 3rd training session, the coach and his staff approached me and the 4 other players that were there, notifying that they're not able to sign any of us for the remainder of the season. And that reason is just weeks before I show up, there's a scandal that broke out involving the team where it was reported that they didn't pay their players' wages, and the Irish Football Federation had to step in, pay those players' wages, and put a ban on that team, which the team took them to court trying to prove that they have the sufficient amount of funds. And unfortunately, when we showed up, that 3rd day of training session, the federation said that the team is not able to sign any players for the remaining of the season because they're not able to prove that they do have those funds. So there I was, perfect timing, involved in something that I had no control over. I informed my agents, kind of explained the whole situation to them. They told me to stay put and to keep showing up to the training sessions because something could change later on in the future. So I did what they said. I kept on showing up to the training sessions for the next 2.5 weeks. But about 2.5 weeks in, the coach approaches me and the other players again saying that, hey, look, why are you guys still showing up? We're trying to battle relegation here. He was very polite saying this. He just wanted to reiterate that there's nothing that the team could do. He gave us our evaluations on where he thought we stood in the team. That was that, and we just stopped showing up to training. Being on the opposite side of the world, thinking that this is gonna work out, and come to figure out it's not going to, panic definitely started to set in because I only had another 2 weeks to figure out where I would be going next. Before I do go into how I made my way out of Europe, I just want to take the next few moments talking about non-football related things, such as my living situation, transportation, basically how I survive. So the first day I get into Limerick, I thought I would be put up in a player house or a hotel, something close to the stadium and the training facility, but boy was I wrong. Upon my arrival, I was told to make my way to Bruff, which is a village of roughly 500 people 30 minutes south of Limerick. The reason why myself and the 4 other players were sent there was because within the past year, the team bought property in Bruff and they were trying to develop it into a facility within the next couple of years. And before I do go into the rest of the details, I just want to say I enjoyed my time there. It was one heck of an experience. It is something I would not forget for the rest of my life. So in Bruff, I arrived here, an old Catholic school built in the late 1700s and which was closed back in the early 200s. And a few fun facts about this place: it was a #1 girls charter school in all of Ireland. Also, President John F. Kennedy has history here. All the women in his family tree have gone to this school. A portion of the building is dedicated to that. It's called the Kennedy Rooms, and it hosts events monthly with millionaires coming in from all over the world. Other cool / creepy parts about this place was that just a few hundred feet away from where I was sleeping, there were 100 nuns buried there. And going off that, it's also the #1 haunted house in all of Limerick. And the best part of all was that the cell phone reception was absolute trash and that there was no Wi-Fi. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because a lot of pro teams, they only train for about 2 hours a day, and after that the players just have free time. So while we were still training with the team, we would only train for 2 hours a day and then, you know, get taken home and have the rest of the day free to ourselves. And then once we stopped training with the team, we just had this whole block of time where we did absolute nothing. Thankfully, within that small village, there was a small pub, and shout out to Clancy's. They were super nice to us, you know. Living there, word of mouth was huge, and a lot of people found out that, you know, athletes were in their village, and the restaurant, the pub, would give us, you know, 3-course meals every once in a while. People would come up to us and buy us groceries since we weren't being paid to stay there. So a big shout out to the people in Bruff. They were super nice, super hospitable. With all that free time, I was trying to figure out where I would be going next. I was in constant contact with my agents and teams all over Europe, trying to see where I would be going next because my time was slowly dwindling. And that day finally came on September 12th. I still had no direction where I should go, but I had to legally leave Ireland. So I packed my bags, said goodbye to the local kids that we befriended there.
Yeah, let's go now.
I'm going with you.
Give him the ball. Yeah,
This is your gift. No, we need to give him a gift. This is your gift.
yeah, keep that. You can keep that.
Thank you. And headed towards Dublin, which was cross country. The reason why it was Dublin was because it was 5 times cheaper to fly out of there than it was from the airport in Limerick. I get into the airport around 11 p.m., still panicking, trying to figure out where I would be going next, but was getting no response. And I started to look at flights. You know, I had contacts in Belgium, not soccer contacts, but people that could host me. You know, I was thinking that if I fly out there, I can give the agents just a couple more days to try and make things work out, or maybe I would receive an email from a team. Thankfully, around 3 a.m., one of my agents calls and says that there might be something in Spain, but it's not guaranteed. You know, he didn't want to give me his word. He said he asked a friend of a friend that said that something might work out. I just told him, I was like, hey, look, you know, this is the only lead I have. I'm just gonna go all in. I can care less. I just still want to pursue this dream of playing soccer. I, you know, hung up the phone with him. I booked my ticket at 4 a.m. and just 6 hours later, I was in the plane making my way towards Madrid. And that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the story of my time in Croatia and how I barely escaped immigration in Ireland. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, it helps me out tremendously, and tune in next time where I'll talk about how I signed a contract in Spain. That's over and out, and I'll see you guys next time.